Hey guys, how you doing? My name is Azaria, and in this video series, is it a sub video series? Yes, in this video sub series, we're going to be talking about modeling objects and how to treat your polygons in Maya. So let's do it. Alright, just a quick recap from one of the videos that we were working on. When we are talking about your objects within this space or within Maya scene, let me just create a cylinder quickly. This is what we refer to as your polygons, and right off the bat, by default, your polygon has it has faces, it has vertices, it has edges, and to a certain extent it has a UV map. So I'm just gonna go through the first few and not the latter. UV mapping will be its own separate subject. So by the end of the series, you should be able to understand how to use different types or how to use the different components of this object in order to achieve what you want. So we're going to be teaching you how to bend this object to your will, and this object or the other objects that you might have come in, and pretty much turn them into anything that you want. So let's talk about vertices, faces, and edges. Alright, all these components, one works with the other in order to create the shape that you see. It's a bit mathematical at that, so we're not going to get into the mathematical side of things. So let's first start with our faces. So if I right click while I'm on the object in question, you will notice that I get a menu. Once again, to access this menu, while you are hovering over the object in question or the object that you have selected, alright, press and hold your right mouse button and you will get face mode, vertex face, vertex, edge, object mode, UV, and multi. Alright, so right now we're going to go into face mode. And what a face is essentially these points or the middle section. This is my face, and I can independently push and pull this face, and you'll notice the effect that it has on the rest of the model or a different section of the model. So depending on what you want to do, you could either pull or push your face, you could twist and rotate it as well, you could scale it up or scale it down. Alright, so when we talk about faces, we are talking about where the texture information gets saved or where the color information gets saved. So now let's go to vertex, and when you click on our vertex, you will notice that now my object has these purple dots on them, and if I hover my mouse on top of them, you will notice that they do tend to highlight. If you aren't getting this highlighting on, it means that you need to go and switch on your pre-selection highlight, and then they just show you how to do it now. Right, so we are gonna go to window, we're gonna go to settings, preferences, and then we're gonna go to preferences. Once you click on preference, you have your preference menu window. Now if we go under settings to selection, click on that, make sure that this is on. This is your pre-selection highlight, meaning that if you have maybe a cluster of objects and you want to select one without making the mistake, it will highlight where your mouse is likely to click. So let's see what happens when I switch it off. You notice that the purple doesn't become red. But if I switch it on, now you see. So make sure that it is on, and then at a later stage you can switch it off. So what a vertex is essentially a border or a point between your face. All right, not your face, but your polygonal face. Okay, so meaning that if I click on it, I can move it arbitrarily up and down. There are some vertices that cannot be rotated, and there are some that cannot be scaled unless you select two of them, and then you will get an interesting result. If you scale them, you get an interesting result as well. So think of your vertices as your points between your polygons. Now let's talk about edges. So once again, with my main object selected, I'm going to right click and select edge. And you will notice that every edge or every border that my mouse hovers on gets selected. And what your edges are, edges essentially connect your different faces by merging where the vertices are. So always think of it like that. An edge is a dividing point between two faces held together by your verts or your vertices. So this we can also move arbitrarily left and right. We can rotate it up and down, and we can scale it uniformly. We can scale it up and down, and then in some cases we cannot scale it in the X or the Z axis. So once you know how these components all fit together to create your object, you can now go about shaping the object or the model that you want to create in effect. Right now, as the videos proceed, I'll introduce you to the other tools as well, but it was paramount that you know that your polygonal object consists of vertices, edges, and faces. All right, so let's say I just create a new one. Now I'm currently in object mode, and when you're in object mode, it means that you can move your object arbitrarily on any axis. You can also rotate and scale it, and then to go back into your vertex mode or your face mode or your edge mode, you right click and then you will have an option. You also have a selection of different shortcuts. So because I'm recording this, I cannot hit the keys on my keyboard because they're already piped into the recording software. But if you hit F8, F9, F10, and F11, you will get the different stages, or you can get to see the different components that make up our polygon that we have spoken about in the previous video. Right, so I'm going to delete this and I'm going to create a new one once again. And like we stated in the previous videos, if you want to create your objects, chances are you will find the option in your modeling shelf, or you could go to create, and then depending on what you want to use, NURBS or polygons or volume primitives, you can then select your choice. Now, one other thing that we have to talk about is keeping our mesh nice and clean, and maybe even low res enough so that we can manage it in its simplest form. And one of the ways to make sure that we have nice, clean, low res mesh is if we go to our channel box layer editor. You will notice that if I go to my inputs and click on polycylinder, I will have a radius, I will have a height in the subdivision axis, and the other submenu items that come across. So if I turn this 20 into 10, you will notice now that my subdivision axis is now consisting of 10 sides. And if I crazy and say 80. You will notice that now I have 80 sides that make up this object. So I'm going to keep it to 10. And then also our radius, we can fiddle around with the radius as well. And as you can see, it's now quite big. We pop it at 1, it is back to the size. And then we can fiddle around with the height. We can also fiddle around with the subdivisional height as well. And as you can see, height wise, we are now getting subdivisions in here. Okay, and then also our subdivision caps, depending on what you are modeling, sometimes the top doesn't look quite nice or appealing towards the end of your modeling while it's still looking like this. So we can either do 2, that way you have nice even subdivisions. Say we are creating a battery or a battery cell, depending on where you're coming from. So I'll just make my height into 4, and then I can play around with the subdivision height, maybe make it 6 as well, so that I have nice even polys. The aim of the game is to make sure that you have nice evenly sized quads across your mesh. This makes your shapes quite manageable, and if you're going to add textures, they're going to sit quite nicely in there as well, because every one of these faces will contain the same amount of information. This we're going to further explore once we talk about UV mapping. So I can say that I want 0 subdivision caps, and I will get something like that. So this by default is on subdivision 1. Alright, and also if you're finding this menu quite tedious to handle, you can click on your attribute editor or press Ctrl A or Command A, and if you're using a Mac with the Windows keyboard, it's Windows button A. Okay, so once I'm on my attribute editor, meaning that whatever object that I've created, it comes with a set of attributes that I can tweak, I can chop and change. And if I go to my poly cylinder, you will notice that I have the same menu, just that this time now it has slides as opposed to the side where I physically punch in the numbers. So depending on which one is quite easier for you, a lot of people prefer using this. So let's carry on making our battery cell, because it is simple enough to make and it covers quite a few of the principles or the main tools that we will commonly be using throughout our exercises.